hello and welcome. Let me just organise my screen before doing it. There we are. Got you. Yeah, hello and welcome to another Two Beer Ideas event. One of our lunchtime sessions. Really enjoy these sessions. They've been really interactive, and yeah, learned lots myself, which is cool. I think today is going to be absolutely the same. As you can see, we have a session on how using an ancient Japanese philosophy can make you a better designer. It's one of those that actually Sam contacted us a couple of months ago, and as soon as he explained the idea, I was like, we have to make this happen. So we're joined by Sampson. It's a freelance senior product designer. Been working in the industry for a long time, working with big global brands right through to small startups. And also, I think perhaps where the idea come from, he's very much a martial artist as well, with 10 plus years in judo. So without any further ado, I maybe invite you to turn your camera on, Sam, and yeah, come and join me on stage, man. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Very well, very well. Yeah, as I was just saying, actually, as soon as you kind of pitched this idea and said, what about doing something like this? I was very intrigued. So are you looking forward to giving the session?
Yeah. Hopefully it's going to be a fun one for people. Hopefully something a little bit different.
Hey, for sure. I can tell. I feel like you're bringing the personality, man, which is what we're all about. So, in terms of just a couple of quick bits of admin,
Yes.
there is a Q&A feature within the Zoom software. So if you're watching along and you have a question for Sam, please do put it in the Q&A. It just makes it a bit easier for us at the end. The chat is also open, so feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're joining from and what you think of that type of stuff. But in terms of getting stuff going, I think we're in a good place, Sam. So I'll maybe get you to share your screen and go from there. And obviously, I gave you a little bit of an intro, but if you want to tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, feel free to go into more detail.
Cool. Let's get the screen up first. Can everyone see?
In the chat, joining from Hamburg. Love to see it. International. Perfect. Mate, that looks really good, Sam. So yeah, if you're happy, I'll jump out the way and we'll come back for the Q&A at the end.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you.
Have a good one, man.
Cheers. All right. Hi, everyone. Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thanks to everyone for taking the time out of your day to come and join us for this event. As you know, my name is Sam, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the worlds of martial arts and design come together from my perspective. And hopefully I can just introduce you to a tool that maybe helps you design, or at the very least, give you something to discuss with your friends and family and colleagues, or at the very least, I break up your lunchtime and give you something slightly different to listen to. So to get us started, I want to tell you a story about this boy on the right-hand side. I want you to cast your mind back to Japan in the late 1800s and imagine it's late in the day, school's in session, the day is nearly over, but all of a sudden, this boy is dragged out of his classroom and beaten by his classmates. He lays on the floor, bloody, bruised, and he asks himself, what if I was stronger? What if I could stop this from happening again? So he hurries home, he's embarrassed, he's hurt, and he's afraid. And he says to his father, Dad, please, can I learn how to study martial arts? Can I learn how to defend myself to stop this from happening again? His father says, no, don't worry about this. Focus on your studies. And unfortunately, the bullying continues. He vows to himself one day that he's going to end this humiliation. So we fast forward now, it's 1877, and the boy, Jigoro Kano, he enrolls himself into the Tokyo Imperial University. He's now an independent man, free from the rulings of his father, but he's scarred from his childhood trauma. So he decides that finally, it's time to learn to see if he can defend himself. So he begins to study the art of jiu-jitsu, which is a form of fighting that includes striking, throwing, pinning his opponents down, as well as strangling them and trying to break their arms. So initially he's thrilled, he's learning how to defend himself, he's learning to become stronger, but soon he realizes that actually the techniques that are being taught favored the big and strong. They required brute force and strength, which is something that the 5'2", 41-kilogram man did not have. So ever the academic, he obsesses over this and slowly begins to develop his own methods. And in those methods, he develops ways to break down his opponent's posture to make them feel lighter, which means they feel easier to throw. So regardless of him being 41 kilograms, he could still defeat someone who is much, much heavier than him. So he continues with these developments, and Kano's skill and reputation grew, leading to the development of his own school, the Kodokan, his dojo, where people were flocking to visit him and learn his methods. In fact, his methods become so effective that his teachings splinter into their own martial art, named Judo, the Gentle Way, referring to the fact that you don't need strength to defeat someone, you just need skill and technique. And thousands traveled to learn from him. So he had kept his vow. The frail and bullied boy had transformed into a master of martial arts. So why am I telling you all this? Well, many, many years later, I too became one of Kano's students, indirectly by my father. At around 13, 14 years old, yes, I was very small, 13, 14-year-old, I stepped into the dojo and began my own journey into the world of judo. So through this, as I ventured through this art, I was fortunate enough to spend time traveling around the world, competing and training with other people, and doing all the things you'd expect from somebody who's involved with sport. However, beyond the sports side of things, I also made an effort to study this martial art. I wanted to understand why it was created and see if there was anything else beneath the surface of these flashy techniques I was being taught and these strange pajama-like uniforms I was wearing. I learned that Kano's most important teaching lies within the threads that hold his system together. So to articulate his system of breaking posture in order to defeat larger opponents, he established the principle of Seiryoku Zenyo. And I apologize, I've definitely butchered the pronunciation, but forgive me, I grew up in England. But this means maximum efficiency with minimum effort. And Kano said that if this is applied correctly, anybody could learn to defeat an opponent, regardless if that opponent is 2 or 3 times their size. And again, I'm sure this all sounds a bit woo-woo, a bit like fantasy, or maybe something that you've heard in Kung Fu movies from the 80s. So let's see this in action. So here are 2 videos. On the left is a teammate of mine who weighs 80 kilograms, fighting an opponent who weighs 100 kilograms. And then on the right-hand side is me, also weighing 80 kilograms at the time, and now I'm fighting the same opponent. So if you see on the left, my teammate tries to do a throw, but he bounces off the guy, as if he's trying to throw a tree. However, in my bout, I'm able to defeat this person because in judo, the aim is to try and throw somebody flat on their back. So I didn't pick these 2 videos to try and show off or make myself seem cool. It was just simply that my teammate and I both happened to weigh the same and then come across the same person in this tournament. But what these videos do show is Kano's principle in action. The difference between the 2 videos is that in my bout, I'm able to apply Kano's philosophy correctly, apply technique correctly, which enabled me to defeat my opponent, whereas my teammate wasn't able to do that. So again, you're probably wondering how all this works, and I'll try not to go into a full-on tangent lecture about the inner workings of judo. So I'll just give you a quick overview. And we can reduce a lot of judo really down to one thing, which is understanding direction. So if you imagine that every person has a piece of string that attaches to their ankles and draws their legs together. If you see that there in the line drawn in yellow. To make a judo technique work effectively, the basic principle is that you have to apply force in the direction that cuts that string, which you can see in white. So that, alongside many other things, such as pulling and pushing them in the right direction and actually learning the technique properly, is what enables somebody to defeat an opponent, regardless if they're big or small. So again, a slight tangent, but hopefully from those examples, you can see what Kano was trying to teach via his principle. However, for Kano, Seiryoku Zenyo did not start and end with judo. It was a philosophy that should be applied to all endeavors. Martial arts was just one expression of that. So Kano says in his book, no matter what the goal, in order to achieve it, you must first put your mental and physical energy to work in the most effective manner. So again, in his book, Mind Over Muscle, which I'd recommend reading if you're interested in this topic, he expands this philosophy and shows how it can be applied outside of combat. So if we take the example of a student who's staying up all night to study, maybe they have an exam tomorrow and they need to get the information in their head so they can pass this exam. So in this case, whilst the student is achieving the goal of studying, they're staying up all night to get the information in their head, they're doing it in a way that's inefficient because if they're sleep deprived, they're more than likely not going to retain as much information, probably going to misunderstand a few things, and then when it comes to the exam the next day, they're going to be so tired that the brain's not going to work properly. Kano says, you must not expend so much effort that you become unable to do other things. You must first create an image of Seiryoku Zenyo in your mind, and then set about your task. So for Kano, it was not just about completing a task, it was about completing a task with intent, completing it in a way that was effective. So again, you're probably wondering, what is Sam talking about? And what does any of this have to do with design or product or technology or creativity? So let me try and explain. If we take Kano's philosophy of maximum efficiency with minimum effort, I believe that in 4 words, he's managed to perfectly articulate design thinking. He's asking, how can we enable people to achieve their goal by making the best use of their energy? Or how can we achieve our business objectives in the most efficient manner possible? Or even, how can we communicate our subject matter in the most efficient way? So sure, there are other frameworks out there, such as human-centered design, jobs to be done, minimalism, or your PM saying, Sam, please keep this simple. However, whilst these frameworks help us to reach a destination, in my opinion, they fail to articulate the journey. Just because we put a user in the center of our design process or enable them to complete their task, Kano is asking, is the method of completing that task one of maximum efficiency? Yes, we've enabled them to get from A to B, but what was the journey to actually get there? So Glastonbury. Let's talk about Glastonbury, as I've just returned from this wonderful place. And I'd be super interested to hear if anyone in the chat was at Glastonbury or has ever tried to get tickets. And if you were at Glastonbury, who your favorite artist was. For me, I know there was bigger acts out there, but I absolutely loved seeing Avril Lavigne. It was a massive throwback to my emo and punk days. And yeah, I loved it. It was great fun. But back to actually being at Glastonbury. To get there, it's really, really hard. Because in order to actually get tickets, you have to organize a spreadsheet with your friends in different groups. You have to prepare multiple devices, all connect them to the website. And then when the tickets go live, you have to sit there refreshing, hoping that you can actually make it through the queue and secure tickets. But if you've tried, you'll know that the website is always crashing and people are often booted out before they can actually finalize the fact of getting their tickets themselves. So it's actually so hard that people have decided to make guides on how to score tickets for Glastonbury. Which, when you think about it from a product perspective, is absolutely wild because people felt the need to create a guide on how to use a checkout page. And a checkout page should be one of the most simple things in existence, especially when you're trying to convert and make sales. So sure, Glastonbury has enabled people to achieve their goal of getting tickets, but the process of getting those tickets is full of pain. So surely there's a better way to do this. So to compare a similar example of trying to purchase a high demand, limited stock product, we can look at Nike sneakers. So prior to the release of the trainers, basically, people sign up, they put their information in, they enter their card details, and then when the product is dropped, the system automatically selects winners. The people who won are charged and the product is shipped to them. There's no refreshing, no crashing, no group chats, no online calls. You just enter your details once and then you wait. Less pain, more efficiency, much easier. So if you look at both examples, both get the job done, both get the thing they're selling into the hands of their customers, but one is clearly more efficient. And then even beyond end users, the maximum efficiency philosophy can also help us to look internal, our own internal processes. So when I was working for a marketplace that matches freelancers with contracts, the team decided that it was time to introduce a new compliance check for certain contracts. So from the end user's perspective, it's pretty simple. You just fill out a form, you wait, and if you pass or fail, you kind of take the relevant steps. But internally, it was an absolute nightmare. The process was really, really manual. It was really cumbersome. It took a couple of days to complete, and there was so much manual data entry that we actually had to hire another member of staff purely to help run this process. So yes, we enabled someone to get their job done, but for us, it took a lot of pain to get there. So maybe if we'd considered Kano's principle or something similar beforehand, we could have got to a more automated solution sooner. Kano says, it cannot be said unconditionally that simply because something was done diligently, it was necessarily good. So you're probably thinking, okay, this is nice. These are some cool examples maybe, but how do I actually apply this to my design process? And I think, especially in today's day and age, everyone thinks of design as like this linear process that you kind of inject steps into. But for me, I think maybe the tricky part of this philosophy is that it's not necessarily a step that you would run through. Rather, for me anyway, it's a companion that you would take along for the ride across all the steps that you're in. So in a world where like timelines are crunched and everyone's trying to work as fast as possible, we've got this fail fast mentality and everyone wants to just get things out as fast as possible, MVP this, MVP that. For me, this philosophy is something that you could hold in your mind to keep yourself accountable when you're experimenting with solutions. So you can kind of ask yourself, once you've got some ideas on the table, and think, is what I've designed something that gets the thing out the door, or is what I've designed the best possible way to achieve whatever it is I'm trying to achieve? Does it actually facilitate the best use of energy for whoever's actioning it? So for me, it can act as a stopgap to pause and assess what we've designed and just rethink, like I said, what's on your table. For me, at least, it's a reminder to create rapid prototypes, get things in front of users, feel things out, and not get caught up with this constant MVP thinking. Because unfortunately, if you're only ever thinking about the MVP and just getting things out the door, you're going to end up with a product that I'm sure most of us have seen before, where everything's a collage, everything's kind of stuck and hatched together, then it's impossible to undo and actually build something beautiful and nice. And that is creating the best use of energy. So for me personally, I would stick this as like a little post-it note on your laptop or anywhere that's memorable, and use it as something you can kind of cast your eyes over whilst you're designing, to take a second, pause, reflect on what you've designed, and just use it as that North Star to rethink what you've already thought. So maybe from all this, you can see how this philosophy can become a pillar in design teams, a company-wide value, or maybe even a catalyst for a new challenger brand, where maybe they've seen this collage-style product and they want to do better. Kano himself says, in your daily work, it's allocation, how much to do, in what order, and how you should figure all this out should be based on the principle of Seiryoku Zenyo. But what if we were to pull the lens back further? Let's think back to the student who's staying up late at night to study. Maybe if we cast our eyes over our own lives, how many examples of inefficient can we see? Maybe you want to get bigger and stronger. Maybe you want to go on a bit of a bulk, but maybe you're trying to pack on this muscle by doing a dirty bulk. You're filling yourself up with burgers, chips, anything that you can get your hands on. So great, you've got stronger, you've got bigger, but you've also filled your body with all sorts of crap along the way. And then maybe you're doing the opposite. Maybe you want to get that six pack, you want to have that beach bod, you want to get summer ready, but you're doing it by crash dieting, which is bad for you for countless reasons. You're malnourishing yourself, and you're more than likely going to bounce back as soon as your holiday's over, because you haven't actually made a lifestyle change. You've done a quick fix. And then maybe even if you look at just, domestic lives, maybe you've got a bunch of chores to do, but you're letting them build up to the point where it takes a whole day to actually get them all done. So what if we had a tool that could help us realign every time we felt ourselves veering from this path? For Kano, Seiryoku Zenyo was that tool. It's a constant companion to help you live a well-balanced, calm, and enterprising life. And for him, and for me maybe, it's something you can take with you in the office, out the office, and then hopefully everywhere in between. So that was a short introduction to this principle, and hopefully something you can kind of either research further if you're interested, or kind of keep in your back pocket or on your laptop when you're designing, to hold yourself accountable to trying to create what's best, not what's fastest. I just want to say again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate everyone joining and listening to me talk about this topic. If you did want to keep in contact with me, or you wanted to follow what I'm up to, you can follow me on Medium, LinkedIn. And then I've also just created a martial arts related Instagram. So if you did want to follow me on the martial arts side of things, you can do that via the Instagram on the right-hand side. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Amazing, Sam. It's brilliant. I loved it. And yeah, I can tell the people at home did as well. So I've seen a few heart emojis going past. Please do stick a little comment in the chat. Let us know if you enjoyed it. I think in terms of that, we've got a bit of time. So I've got a few questions myself. It'd be great, if anyone out there at home had questions for Sam while we've got him here. I think the thing I love about this is, it's definitely a mindset, and it can be applied in design, but in your personal life and work life, all that type of stuff. So very keen to drill in a little bit further. Just before I do that, I will jump into the comments. There's a couple of there. Liz, loved it, Sam. Great talk. Thanks for the insights. Really interesting. Thank you, Sam. This was great. We've got a few people joining from Atlanta, no less, which we love to hear. So yeah, what time is it in Atlanta? This must be start of the day over there, I guess. So we've got an early morning session with Sam for Stephanie in Atlanta. So yeah, I think 8:19 a.m. We love that, Stephanie, with your Cheerios, no less. A bit of Sam Sampson with breakfast. Perfect. Mate, awesome. I guess a couple of questions from my side, and as I say, Q&A is open. Please jump in. Otherwise, you've just got me asking the questions. In terms of one of the things I was thinking about, so it makes a lot of sense to me. You're talking about efficiency. You're talking about getting this mindset in place. You're talking about being efficient. But are there ever cases where perhaps you don't want to be doing things as efficiently as possible? I was thinking around, I don't know, financial technologies or things like that, perhaps where you want to be sure that you're being slow and careful. Can it be applied anywhere, basically?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I think maybe I think what it is when you translate Seiryoku Zenyo into English, it becomes maximum efficiency with minimum effort. And I think maybe the English translation is a little bit for red herring, because really Kano's not necessarily saying efficiency in terms of speed. What he's saying is, what's the best use of energy? So I think every product in creation is going to have a slightly different definition of what the best use of energy means. And I think for like a checkout page, you know, in the Glastonbury and sneakers example, you probably want speed to be, efficiency probably does mean speed, or best use of energy probably does mean speed, because you want to get people through that process as quick as possible, and you want to catch them in that moment where they're considering a purchase, and you kind of want to, yeah, keep them in that moment and not delay them, so then they, you know, bounce off the checkout page or something like that. But then if we're looking at financial products, I think best use of energy, the definition of that probably changes slightly, because yeah, you probably do want to slow down a bit. You want to make things feel considered. You want to make things feel like they're going through the correct confirmations and checks and all that sort of stuff. So I think what it's about is understanding that the goal is to create the best use of energy. And then I think within whatever you're trying to create, you need to figure out, kind of define what the best use of energy is within the context that you're creating. And once you understand that, then you can apply the principle. That's how I would tackle it, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you. A couple of questions have come in, so I'll take the first one. You can read along at the same time, but yeah, I'll read it out for you. Question from Rajinder. Great question, Rajinder. Thank you for putting that in there. Their question was there a specific situation or workplace where you realized that this could be applied, or was it something that you've just always applied?
That's a good question. No, there wasn't a specific situation that kind of when it occurred to me. I think it was kind of a slow burner as I was kind of maturing in my martial arts career, and then also maturing in my professional career at the same time. And then yeah, I can't pinpoint a moment, but I just started to see that there's a lot of the kind of things that we talk about that could be applied across both. Because I think ultimately, really, like, you know, what Kano's asking and really what design is asking is, how do we be better? And then I think, yeah, I just kind of slowly saw the connection of, okay, well, we're trying to be better in this element, and we're trying to be better in this element. And actually, on the martial arts side, they've done a really good job of just defining what it means to be better. And then it just kind of came together. So yeah, I can't pinpoint an exact moment. It was just a slow burner that occurred as I was just growing in both areas.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks very much. Next question there from Stephanie. When you're working on a product and it gets challenging, how do you remind yourself of the philosophy?
Yeah, this is a really good question, actually, because it's so easy to get caught up in you know, the fast-paced nature of our industry. So this is something I do in terms of like design, as well as doing it in terms of I also do this in terms of sports. So you won't be able to see, but I have bits of artwork around my design, around my office. And there's also like a Nike book that I have that I see as soon as I enter, and it's After All, There Is No Finish Line, and it's a book about, you know, designing at Nike and stuff. So what I try to do is I try and pop the reminders around myself. So when I like to obviously design on the screen, but then I try and pull back and kind of look around, go for a walk, go elsewhere. So I try and put these little triggers. I guess it's probably related to Atomic Habits, maybe, if anyone's read the book. But I try and create these little triggers to kind of jolt my thinking. And I also do this when I'm training. So I have a bag for my training stuff, and it kind of opens like this, almost like a laptop. And on the top section, I literally have tape. We use finger tape in judo. It's really, really durable. And I stick tape on the inside of my training bag, and I write down the techniques that I'm working on. So I try and, because similar to this whole philosophy, I try and train with intent. So I'll like, right, okay, I'm working on a Tai Otoshi, which is a judo technique, or I'm working on an Ippon Tsunagi, which is another judo technique. So as soon as I kind of go into the moment of training, I have this reminder to be like, okay, don't just do what you're good at. These are the things you're working on. Make sure you work on them. So I try and put these little triggers around my environment. So I just have these constant reminders to kind of, like I said, tap me on the shoulder and be like, hey, Sam, don't forget about this. Remember to do this. So I think that's one way I like to do it, and maybe it'll help you. But I think another good way is really just to take a step back from what you're doing and try and shift your environment, whether that's going for a walk, really trying to switch off as much as possible, put something completely random on in the like in the evening to watch, try not to get so caught up. There's such a hustle culture nowadays. Everyone on LinkedIn is telling you to do this and do that, do this course, read this book, and it's so exhausting. But your mind needs time to like switch off. So really carving out switch off time is really good. Again, exercise is a fantastic way to do that. So if you kind of find yourself caught up and a bit stuck, I think finding ways to step back is really good, and different people have different ways to do that. But yeah, a combination of triggers and making an actual effort to step away from what I'm doing, I think, is a good way to kind of remind myself of what I'm doing, and also, again, trying to just be better and shift how I'm thinking.
Amazing. Yeah, again, makes lots of sense, man. Makes lots of sense. It possibly bleeds into the next question that's there. But I will ask it just in case it expands at all or triggers anything else from your side. But the question there is, do you have any tangible practical examples on how to apply this philosophy in design? I see the idea, but I'm not sure on how to apply it. So I think part of what you were describing there was obviously that reminder, getting yourself into that mindset and stuff like that. But from that sort of design perspective, you've got a new brief or you're coming up with new ideas and stuff. Is there any practical tips or practical examples that come to mind for you?
Yeah. Any practical examples? It's a hard one, right? Because like I said, it's kind of more of a mindset that you want to be in. Maybe some examples is, I think what this does is maybe it's a kind of reminder to ask what if. So maybe the practical way of doing it is like I said, maybe you have a reminder or something. But when you're looking at your designs or whatever you're working on, it's trying to stay curious and think like, okay, for example, something I'm working on at the moment, we have a design, it's all like pretty much approved, everyone's happy with it. But myself and some of the other design team were kind of like sitting there, we're like, okay, well, what if we just get rid of everything? What if we just like remove as much as possible? What happens then? So again, that would probably bleed into Seiryoku Zenyo, because trying to be efficient with your communication, so you're kind of only keeping what's necessary. So I think, yeah, it's hard to say a practical example because it's more of a mindset, and it's trying to use it as a reminder to try new things and experiment and ask, why is this even here? Why is this even here? And try and maybe strip back in some cases. I don't know if that helps. Maybe I'll think about this a little bit more, and I can like chuck it over to someone who can maybe throw this out to the person that asked it. It's a good question, but like I said, it's a mindset, so it's hard. It's more mental than like practical.
Yeah,
I'd like to think about it more and see if I can produce a better answer, if that's all right.
Mate, yeah, perfect. I thought it was a great answer actually. Anyway, but yeah, if that does happen, we obviously know who's in the webinar, and we can share some links and all that sort of stuff, which is great if you're happy to do it. The next question there from Ritaban, design for large organizations could be by committee or working groups. As a designer, how do you use this to guide, how do you use this philosophy to guide these groups towards good design? Do you find you get buy-in, at your current work? Do you talk about it with people that you're working with? How does it work if you're working in a wider team?
Yeah, so it's not actually something I've spoken about to the current team I'm working with. For me, so when we're working with like large organizations, obviously there's multiple stakeholders that you have to handle and manage and all this sort of stuff. But ultimately, when it comes to me doing my job, I kind of meet people, do this stuff, but then there's a moment where I kind of sit in isolation, I guess, in some ways, and kind of craft out my ideas. So for me, it's something that I would use when I'm crafting my ideas, and then I would only go back to those people once I'm confident with those ideas. So it's something I would apply to my own workflow, and then use that to try and get to the best possible solution to then present to those people. And then, maybe this even goes back to the previous question. So like when I'm asking people, we've all been in this situation where you've kind of got a design, you think it's nice and tidy, and then people say, oh, can we add this? Can we add that? It's quite common that people want to add things, especially in software. And my kind of normal instinct is, if I don't immediately see the value or the reason why, just ask, be like, hey, like, okay, well, we've got this thing, and I think I'm confident that it's like neat and tidy and the best solution possible. And someone's like, okay, can we add this? I don't know, this button. It's like, okay, but why do we need this button? And try and like dig down into the core reason why we're adding something. Because if someone can't fully articulate or explain or validate why they want to add something, then maybe we can think about this as maybe there's another way to do this, or maybe that's just a bit of design bloat. There's actually a really good example of something I'm working on right now, which I need to be careful not to, break some NDAs. But there is actually a particular button that people want to create, and it was asked for us by another team, and it kind of got filtered into the process, and it was in my designs, and I was kind of in a meeting yesterday with a big group of people, and I just literally had that exact moment. I was like, okay, but why are we doing this? And like, how does this actually affect the other, like, it's a consumer and like viewer platform. It's like streaming. So, okay, the streamer's going to press this button, but what do we actually want to happen on the other side? Why are we doing this? And people couldn't fully understand, like articulate why or explain why this button was there. And then that was a good reason to kind of strip it back. It's like, okay, if we're not confident, we don't know exactly what this button's here, let's just pull it back. So yeah, maybe that was a long way of saying, just asking why and try and really get some something kind of measurable to what you're creating, because ultimately that's what we want to do. Everything with us is, yes, it's software, it's design, but it is measurable. It is sales in some way. It is about getting eyes or buyers or users and stuff. So measurable, having good reasons as to why something's been added is kind of how I play this game, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, man. Makes a lot of sense. The last question that's there, I've got another one of my own that I'll come to perhaps to wrap things up. As I say, the last one. There's another one coming. Perfect. We'll be here till dinner time. The question that's at the top there, I'll maybe get your take on it. I must admit, I'm not 100% sure on it myself, but wanted to run it past you. So, would you agree that this philosophy can be molded into the opposite ideology of what it's preaching, based on that definition of best use of energy within a given context? I'm not sure.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, and the chat can confirm or deny this, you're basically saying, is there a situation where you would not want to use the best use of energy and maybe you'd want to use the worst use of energy? I think that's what the person's asking. Would you agree?
Yeah, potentially.
If I've understood that correctly, I would say that I think it kind of goes back to what like the first question, right? It's about defining what the best use of energy is. So the immediate thing that comes into mind might be a flow where you do actually want to create friction, right? Let's say someone is a cancellation flow, canceling your Prime subscription or something. In that case, you want to probably have a few opportunities for the person to rethink what they're doing. Maybe you don't want them to cancel, so you want to slow them down a bit. And I think this is where the English translation gets confusing, because it talks about efficiency and really it's about best use of energy. So let's say I'm working on this flow. Up front, you'd probably think about, okay, well, what's the goal here? What is our definition of best use of energy? And maybe the best use of energy is actually to make it as long as possible. So in that case, I kind of see what the person who's asking is getting at, but I would still say that still falls into best use of energy. It's just that the best use of energy, the definition of what is best use in that scenario has changed, and then you just filter into that.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. A great example that you've pulled off the top of your head there. I'm impressed with that one, man. Yeah, good effort. Yeah, the last question in the chat there from Anki is actually a very practical and great question. So for that, thanks for putting that in there. The question is on the back of your, ask why. I do that every time, but sometimes you can piss people off. Fair. And they're kind of looking for a little bit of insight in, have you come across that? How do you handle it, essentially?
Not too much. I think it's also about equally when someone comes to you with an idea and you're asking them why, I think you also need to be mindful that you need to communicate with value back. So if you're asking why, just saying like, oh, but why, obviously that would be quite annoying, but it's more about, I think it's just about framing it. It's like, let's say this button example, they want to add this button in, and you just go, okay, but what value is it adding? Like, how are we measuring this? What's our KPI? And if you can kind of tie it back to something that's like tangible and a bit more measurable, I think that's probably a better approach, because then you can then you can start thinking about, or it could even be like, how does this achieve, like, our goal of this project is to do X. How does this thing that you want to add feed into that overall goal? And it's just about, and maybe it's just about communicating that in slightly different ways, and just saying like, okay, this is a really interesting idea, but if we can't define how this is helping our goal, or we can't just, really articulate how this creates measurable impact, then maybe this is something we need to think about further and have as a follow-up project, which is something I've done a few times where things start to bloat a bit. I've gone, look, I think this is really cool and it's a nice idea, but I think maybe we need to think about this a bit more, think about how this, like I said, has this measurable impact. And then once we define that, then bring it into another project. So I think it's about asking why in different ways when you start to feel that someone might be annoying. And like I said, a valuable conversation is two-way. So you have to, even though you're pushing back, you still have to push back with value. And I find the best way to do that is to tie it back to the project goals or some kind of measure. That's
data. Yeah, it makes lots of sense, man. Makes lots of sense. I guess just final couple of talking points from me. How well do you think this philosophy extends to other, creative pursuits? Can it be applied to art or writing or music or anything like that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, well, if we look at Kano, like in his original creation of this, like he says it can be applied to any part of life. So it could probably be applied quite well. So I think if we remember really Kano's philosophy is about setting a goal and then finding the best way to achieve that goal. So if we think about like art, writing, music, TV, any creative pursuit, they're all really methods of trying to achieve something, whether that's to make money or communicate a specific idea. So I guess like within that, there are probably good and bad ways of achieving that. Maybe most of us will we probably all agree on what's a good song versus a bad song, or at least in this room, more than likely agree on what's a good poster versus a bad poster. So I guess the creator kind of has to figure out what their goal is and then how they want to get it done. And actually, I was having a conversation with a friend not too long ago about horror movies, and I think there could be a good example here where if you think about like a horror movie, they want to make us feel a certain way, right? They want to make us feel anxious, scared, nervous, a bit on edge. And most horror movies rely on this via jump scares. The build up to a jump scare, and bang, you get scared. But then after that moment, it's done. You can kind of relax because you know the jump scare's over. And then maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, you start building that tension again. But if you've ever watched The Haunting of Hill House, season 1, if you haven't, it's really good. If you're into kind of horror and kind of scary stuff, it's on Netflix, or it was at least. But what they do, if you watch it, you'll notice that there's like very little jump scares. And that's because the writers figured out that the thing that's scary isn't the jump scare itself, it's the thing that builds up to the jump scare. So what they do is they play the whole series in this like middle ground where you feel like a jump scare is going to come, but you don't, it kind of in many cases doesn't ever come, but you still feel tense and anxious and a bit nervous the whole time. So I think kind of like the Glastonbury example, both achieve the goal of making you feel nervous and afraid, but one of them does it slightly better. So I think, yeah, it's just about really, this all boils down to you have a goal, you have a thing that you want to do, communicate, make someone feel, and then you just try and figure out, okay, what's my definition of best, and then how do we get to that best?
Yeah, makes lots of sense. I guess just to, as I say, draw things to a close then, you've planted the seed. I think people will be going away from this thinking, okay, I need to, think about it a bit more. Is there other resources? What would you recommend if people wanted to go off and look into this a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's 2 avenues. I guess if you want to look at the actual like sport side of things, obviously the Olympics are coming up. I will say, even though I've done a lot of judo, it's not the most exciting sport to watch, but that's something you could probably check out. But then if you want to look into the philosophy side of things, I recommend reading the book Mind Over Muscle, which is written by Jigoro Kano, which you'll find a lot of the quotes that I've pulled from that book. And it's probably a good introduction to the philosophy and a little bit about how he's thinking, because it's interesting. Kano's known for like being the founder of judo, but he's also known for completely renovating the Japanese education system. So he's a really interesting guy. He's done a lot of stuff, and I think there's probably a lot of value people can find from just reading about him. But even if you don't want to buy the book, have a little look on Wikipedia. There's loads of stuff on him. Yeah, I'd start with
Mate, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sam. Really enjoyed it, and very, very grateful for you, as I say, contacting us, and being up for sharing with the community. It's what it's all about. And I love these type of sessions where, it's very thought-provoking, and it's now up to the people that have joined to, choose to do with it as they wish, man. So yeah, really appreciate your time. Thanks for giving up your time now, but also, thanks very much for pulling together the slide deck. How did you find delivering the session? Is this it? Have you got the bug? Are you going to be doing
yeah, it was
more?
good fun, actually. It was good fun. I really enjoyed it. I was saying to David, this is actually the first time I've done a talk like this. I talk a lot of rubbish on LinkedIn with my silly little posters, but this is the first time I've got face-to-face with people. So yeah, it's good fun. Really, really nice. Really, really thankful for everyone who's joined. And thank you for giving me the opportunity as well.
Nailed it, man. Nailed it. So yeah, thanks very much. Thanks to everyone that's joined us wherever you are in the world, particularly if you've joined us early in the morning. Very grateful for that. And yeah, hope you all have a good rest of your day, good rest of your week, and we'll catch up with you all very soon. But thank you very much, and speak to you soon.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.